Hello, everybody. My name is Boris. I've been playing this game for over 3 years, and I made a lot of mistakes when I was learning this game. And even though the game has changed quite a bit, and it's become a lot more forgiving for new players, there's still a lot of these mistakes that you can make. So I wanted to go over them. But before we get started, I just wanted to touch on something. We just hit 75 subscribers earlier this week, which is amazing considering we've been at this for less than a month. But I also noticed that around 96% of our viewers are not subscribed. So if just 10% of those people could subscribe, we would hit almost 250 subscribers. And I'm planning a special surprise at 100 and at 250 subscribers, maybe a giveaway of some sorts, and I'll work that out soon. But if we can get there, that would be awesome. So if you're watching this and you're not subscribed, hit that subscribe button. But without further ado, let's get started. I want to preface this discussion by saying I am a low spending player. I do spend money on this game, but not nearly as much as half the whales in this game. So I can't just go max out the first commander the next time it comes out. So these observations come from the fact of enjoying the game while using as little resources as possible and maximizing that experience. Because your experience as a free-to-play or low-spending player is not going to be the same as a whale. You'll have different problems. You'll have different benefits. So just keep that in mind as we proceed. Now, the first and probably most common mistake people make is investing in too many commanders at once, especially as a free-to-play or low-spender. You don't get a lot of gold heads, so you got to use them wisely. When I was new, the biggest mistake I made was I invested a lot of heads into Richard as a cavalry player. It was foolish. I thought maybe I could get some use out of him, build up an alternate march. But the reality is, by the time I got even halfway to building him, he had become outdated. So you can't split your resources into 4 places. Try to focus on one thing at a time. Even if it means you're not going to keep up with the whales, you're never going to be able to do that. So just try to focus on what you're doing and focus on one commander at a time. Once you get that one figured out, jump to the next one. On that subject, we'll go to don't chase the meta. The meta will always change. So try to aim for the meta, but don't panic and build the next commander the instant it comes out if your pairing is already solid. A perfect example is when Bertrand came out. He's good, he's still very solid, but for most players, he's not really worth 690 gold heads for an XY Nevsky you already have. So, perfect example, he does boost the meta a little bit, but if you already have those 2 commanders, you can take those 690 heads and use them elsewhere, where you can actually get more utility and more available cases covered. So, don't necessarily hop right on the next meta thing. Do your research, make sure that you know that this is going to be a huge jump up, and don't be afraid to stick with something that's already solid. On that note, don't be afraid to pick a less meta commander. I still use Khan all the time. One of my favorite commanders to use in the field, even though he gets swarmed, even though he gets attacked. So, if you have a playstyle you like, go for it. Because at the end of the day, you're trying to have fun. And that's the end goal of this game. So stressing out about having the most efficient pairing is not worth your time if you're a free-to-play or low-spending player. Just try to enjoy it. Granted, you do want to make wise investments. Saladin's a perfect example. Wise investment, he's good in almost every situation. But if you like a Khan, if you want to build William and have him run William Saladin, great. Just do whatever makes you comfortable. The next point we're going to touch on is know when the benefit of adding extra heads starts to taper off. William's a great example of this. His first 3 skills are amazing. They're really solid. They do him a lot of help. But his 4th skill really only boosts an extra 10% defense, and it doesn't affect the rage gain and it doesn't affect anything else. And then his expertise just buffs another one of his skills. So it does give you some extra stats, but for 300 gold heads to get him expertised, it's not really worth it. So he's a perfect example of, you could leave him at 5551 and he's going to do almost as well as expertised. Take it from me, I've got about 8 million kills on him, and I've only had him ready for about a KvK. So we're about 2 weeks into this one, so 1 KvK in 2 weeks. Similarly, Martel is 5515 is effective for anything that's not a city garrison, because this is only a city garrison skill, and his expertise only gives an extra 5% defense and health for another 300 gold heads. So there's 300 gold heads you save for both of them. You'd be able to expertise a whole nother commander with that. So just keep that in mind when you're going. Do some research, figure out what skills you really need, and if the expertise is really necessary to accrue. And on that note, a mistake I made when I started, which luckily these most new players don't have to worry about as much, is when I started playing, you couldn't lock the skills. So wherever your commander was progressed, if you had 3 skills unlocked, it would randomly go to the 3 skills. So it'd be like this, and you'd level up one of the 3 skills. Or if you had all 4 unlocked. I was one of the people who was foolish enough to level up and star up my commanders way too fast. So then the skills got random and jumbled and messed up, and it was a royal mess. But similarly now, if you are doing skill ups and you have a commander who started up further than his skills are, make sure you dial back the skills so that you level up the skill you want or the skill area you want, instead of just leveling them all and hoping for the best. It'll save you a ton of headache, and you'll get much more consistent results. While this next one is not directly relating to commanders, it most certainly affects them. One of the biggest mistakes I make, and I still regret, and I'm still kicking myself for, is not focusing on equipment sooner. When I started building garrisons, I was focused on getting them all ready as soon as possible. Because of that, all my gems, everything went invested in getting them ready. But because of that, my gear fell behind. So while I do have a solid gear set here, which is completed by the other gold pieces here, my Jadwiga set's almost complete. But then my archer set is not that great. So even though I have all these commanders, my gear is a little further behind. While it's still solid, it could certainly be better. And I could have done a lot better if I worked on the gear first. So if anything, make sure you're keeping up on your gear. And make sure you're buying the 50 material pieces here in the VIP shop every week. And make sure that you are acquiring as many of those as possible from events. Ceroli, Ian's Ballads, wherever you can get a hold of them, get a hold of them. Because they are so valuable, and you will thank me in the future. And while we're on the subject of events, don't skip out on events. Champions of Olympia is a perfect example. You get activity points, win or lose. I'm not very high ranked, because I don't have the time to invest to push the rank up. I just make sure I get my rewards every week. So even if you can't push yourself up to the highest rank in Champions of Olympia, it's worth it to get the 2 gold heads. Because that's 4,000 gems worth of value you're getting for half an hour to 45 minutes of work. Similarly, Ark of Osiris is amazing. Even if you lose 5 gold heads for a loss in an hour of your time, is amazing. Your Crystal Quest, if you're in KvK, any of the daily quests, make sure you're doing them. Even if the rewards don't look that great, they're free and they add up very quickly. And that goes to our last thing too. Don't ever be afraid to ask for help. There's always going to be somebody with more experience than you. Goodness knows that there are plenty of people that have more experience than me. But those resources aren't valuable unless you use them. If you have somebody who's got an experience, ask them a question. And don't be afraid to ask 2 or 3 people, because my experience is going to be different than somebody else's experience, even in the same kingdom. So don't be afraid to ask several people questions, and don't be afraid to do some independent research, especially if you're not sure if something is accurate or not from what you're hearing. But with that, we conclude our discussion on this subject. If you like this video, hit the subscribe button. We're well on our way to 100 subscribers, and if we had just about 5% of our total views as subscribers, we would well surpass the 250 subscriber mark, and I'd be able to do 2 different giveaways for you guys. So if you want to see more videos, please hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so you never miss a Rise of Kingdoms video. If you want to see a specific subject covered, let me know in the comments. I do my best to try to answer them quickly and effectively if you have questions, and I'm always welcome to suggestions. So, without further ado, good luck, fight well, and I will see you on the battlefield.